Create that life, legacy designers. Amber Prosia here. Welcome to episode number 21 of the Parenting Biz Podcast, coming to you every Monday. Now let's chat with this week's featured guest, Claire Barton. Claire, are you ready to enlighten us on your journey of how you strategize and drew the life you've always wanted for yourself and your family?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Claire is a Brisbane-based business consultant, coach, mentor, and entrepreneurial cheerleader. Taking imperfect action is the name of the game and the only way to move forward while maintaining your sanity, some semblance of balance, and actually being able to build your business in a way that supports the reasons you started it in the first place. Claire has a beautiful, flexible online business and helps to strategize, teach, transform, and implement content strategy, which is creating consistent content that is aligned and on brand for your business and audience, as well as productivity and organization, which is streamlining, outsourcing, automating, planning, etc. She works with kick-ass lady bosses with big ideas to create connection, change, and ease in their businesses and in the lives of their tribe. She also has 2 crazy kids, an escapee dog, and a deep and everlasting love for red wine and a closet obsession with 90s rap, which I won't force you to rap anything, Claire, but I would say we might have to do that offline because I would love to hear it. But Claire, please take a minute and fill in any gaps from that intro and give us a little glimpse of your own personal life.
Oh, thank you. It's beautiful, a beautiful welcome. So you've pretty much nailed and covered everything that I do kind of in my business. I've been doing this business for about 3 years, but I've been in some form of my own business for about 7 or 8 years. I've tried quite a few different ones, and my past was in business management since I was about 16 or 17. So business is kind of my hobby. I find it really hard when someone asks me what my hobby is because it's kind of business is what I do for fun as well. So it's just a big part of how I live. One other thing I have to pop in there is that I'm a Virgo, so I'm basically hardwired to be super organized and a little bit over the top with some of the systems and planning and all of that sort of thing. But that's definitely what forms kind of the basis for a lot of my client work.
Absolutely. And people love that, right? We need that missing piece too. Right? So it's all good. But thanks for the heads up. We appreciate it. But thank you so much, most importantly, for being on the show today, Claire. We know you have such a busy schedule, and we really appreciate you taking the time out to make this happen with us.
Thank you.
So thank you. Yeah. As you are aware, our listeners are parents or parents-to-be that realize ownership is key to not only to our parenting or business, but in life in general. And along that parenting journey, we can lose sight of that. However, if we focus on life as a game, a sport, or an activity, not only can we learn to let go easier, but we can also gain strength from our mistakes and design our core focus to be one of laughter, joy, and most importantly, having fun, just like a 5-year-old kid in the sandbox. So this week, our entire interview will be artistically drawn around the board game Pictionary. Now, the object of the game, for those who haven't played, is to be the first team to reach the finish square and to guess the final sketch correctly. So let's organize our teammates and begin recovering from perfectionism through taking imperfect action on our biz journey with our team captain, Claire. So, Claire, now, as you are aware, this is just an analogy and we can create and design our lives any way we want, but this is your chosen board game. So let's get our dice rolling hands and artistic fingers ready to play the best we can do while having fun getting around the board. So before we begin, Claire, because I'm sure people are kind of wondering what the Recovering Perfectionist is all about, which besides is the name of your podcast, which is absolutely amazing. So if you guys haven't gone out and hear it, definitely go download the Recovering Perfectionist. You can get it off of iTunes. It's great, lighthearted, raw, and a real chat. But Claire, please, from your own words, what does that mean, you're a recovering perfectionist?
Yes. So I used to really identify with the perfectionist thing. I thought it was a massive compliment. I thought I was incredibly clever. Every time I went for a job interview, for example, and they said, the question that always comes up, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? So every time I had to answer that, when it got to the weaknesses, I said, and I'm a perfectionist because, I was like being a bit humble and like I'm a perfectionist. And I knew that actually that was a really good thing from a point of view of an employer because they know that I'm going to put in the hard hours, I've got attention to detail, I hit deadlines, all of that sort of thing. So I really kind of really resonated with that. And then things started to change, I guess, as my priorities started changing. And really the kind of catalyst for trying to hit into recovery was when I first became a mum. So my first child just turned 5 back in February, and we spent a great deal of time breastfeeding. He was a very fussy baby, and we had a few issues in the beginning and all of that sort of thing. And I remember it was about 4 o'clock every day. He was cluster feeding, and I was sitting on the couch, and the sun would come through the front window at this certain time of day for about 20 minutes and hit the TV cabinet, and all I could see from where I was sitting was this thin and thickening layer of dust. And I was at the point where I was almost in tears every single day, and the reel was going over in my head. You still haven't even cleaned that thing. It only takes you 20 seconds to just go and dust the TV cabinet. All of this sort of thing. And I kind of gave myself a bit of a reality check about what's actually important as a parent and that sort of thing. So I guess that was, one of the examples of where I sort of, really realized that I needed to back off a little bit on the perfectionist thing. I've always been very much into in service. I really love impressing people. I really love, helping people out and seeing some really beautiful results and that sort of thing. But to that end, I was burning myself out. I was getting to overwhelm. And, becoming a parent, you have to kind of pick and choose where your energy is going to lie, because, there's some really clear priorities that kind of come out. So how that all came about when I started the podcast a couple of years ago was really about, I started working with a lot of clients who had exactly the same issue. So I had kind of gotten into the point of going, I'm just going to experiment. I'm going to say yes to everything. I'm going to try everything in my business just so that I can quickly fast track what works and what doesn't work, and who I want to work with and who I don't want to work with, and what sort of services I want to offer and what sort of services I don't. So I felt like I kind of moved through that really well and came up with some really great strategies. And I wanted to help other people, especially in business, have the confidence and the tools and strategies to be able to take that imperfect action and also, hit their goals and progress through whatever it was that they were trying to progress through.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And what a story for you to come out on the other side. And do you feel like you have any of that now, or are you kind of like, no, that was just a chapter of your life and perfectionism is out the window now?
No, oh, absolutely. She's not going anywhere. I talk about the inner recovering perfectionist quite a lot. And at the end of the day, it is part of my personality. And there's some really great things that perfectionism, helps me do. And my house is not as perfect as it used to be, but it's a really beautiful place to live, and I really enjoy that. So that's a really important part that I don't want to lose. My number one strategy for myself and for other people is I say, give her a job. She's not going anywhere. Just put her down the back of the bus and give her something else to do. Give her the crosswords to do. Mine does the house, and mine does the gift wrapping at Christmas time. All those sort of things. Like, she's not allowed to touch my keyboard. She's not allowed in my business. My perfectionist, there's a very fine boundary there, but she can do some other things. I've just given her some other jobs. She does jigsaw puzzles. So.
Oh, I love that you actually count that as someone else. It's so great to like a third party. No, it's awesome. Well, let's go into the first element of the game, which is team members. Because let's be honest, the entrepreneur journey can be lonely and overwhelming, but doesn't have to be, like you actually already mentioned. So how did you find surrounding yourself with business besties make a difference in your overall business glow?
Such a good question. I was really lucky that I had someone who I'd worked with actually in corporate who'd started a business a couple of years before me, and she's continued to be an excellent friend and also a fantastic and very, very inspirational mentor as well. So I think that was a really big part of it. She also has started her own community. So being able to hang out with people who, she saw as her people, I really resonated with that. So I think that really made a difference, having some people to play around with, or to experiment with. I think in terms of picking who to play with and that sort of thing, especially in the online space, it's really got to feel aligned. There's so many groups online for Facebook groups and that sort of thing. There's so many meetups you can go to. And I think most of the time you can tell pretty much straight off the bat whether it's your tribe or not. And you've got to give yourself permission to not hang out with the people who aren't your tribe. And it's nothing personal. It's nothing, you're not being selective or mean or rude or anything if you deselect and you opt out of certain places. It's really about finding people who you can align with and who have similar values and that sort of thing. So for me, having the space and the ability and the permission to not get everything right all of the time and still feel supported and still, be able to be completely authentic. And I talk about, being authentic, but not Instagram authentic, like actually authentic, and actually being able to say, oh my gosh, you guys, I've stuffed up so badly. This is what I've done. And to have them go, oh, that sucks. You shouldn't have done that. But oh, well, don't worry. Let's dust you off and get back onto it, sort of thing, rather than, having the feeling like you can't tell anyone that something's gone wrong, because, it really does. The first couple of years of starting a business, as you know, are super tricky, and there's so much that comes up, and the mindset stuff is probably the hardest thing to get on. You can learn skills, but if you can't get your mindset right by having the right people around you, I think that becomes really challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you even said the difference between authentic and Instagram authentic, because there is a massive difference. And I like how you actually mentioned too about the alignment, because and I hope you don't mind me saying, but on the online world, it's a little bit easier if we're in tune with ourselves, like how you brought it with your mindset. But if we're in tune with what feels right with us and what's draining and what's actually empowering, then we can make that decision a lot easier. However, what if we brought on friends or close family members or, relatives, and we realize that actually it's not a good fit, which unfortunately does happen? How do you recommend clients of yours to go about handling those tougher situations, rather than saying leaving a group on Facebook or just not going to that meetup anymore, which are easier way outs?
Yeah. Look, I guess in an ideal world, you would have the confidence to say, loud and proud, and tell everyone, I'm starting a business and I'm doing this, and these are the people I work with, and this is what I'm passionate about. But unfortunately, there's always going to be someone or people in your world who are the naysayers, and they've got their own story about it, right? So, and often when people are talking about a business, and I felt this as well. As I said, I think this is my fourth business, and I was terrified of telling certain members of my friends and family, because I knew I'd get the eye roll and the, oh, what's she doing this time? Oh yeah, good on you, Claire. Like, let's see how this one goes. And I was really worried about it, but I was also super sure about this one. Like, this one just felt so different, and it felt right, because I was actually just doing my passion. I wasn't kind of, looking for new skills and qualifications and then turning it into a business. So yeah, unfortunately, there are going to be those people in almost everyone's world. I've never experienced anyone who hasn't had someone who, didn't think it was going to work or whatever. I think I talked about this at a festival recently when we were talking about, strategies to overcome perfectionism and finding your tribe and having the confidence to, really sort of stand up for yourself. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, you've kind of got to pick and choose who you have on your team and who you have in your, I call them your cheerleaders. So if there's some people who are just going to kind of, brush it off and not want to talk about it, then you don't have to give them the ins and outs of it. If you know that it's going to bring you down, you've got to be really selective with who you tell what sort of information to. I think that's probably the biggest thing, is really just having a bit of giving yourself permission to not have to include every person in your life with your business decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing that it's okay. You don't have to tell them everything. Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's great. Let's move into the next element, which is sketching a new word. Because just like in the game Pictionary, you have to sketch the word on the card. But what if you can't draw? And for example, like myself, because honestly, I would always get my brother to do all my artistic drawings growing up in school. So how important is it, have you found, working with your clients to understand, and for yourself as well, but realizing your own strengths and your weaknesses?
It's such a big one. I think going back to what I was saying earlier with the recovering perfectionist, when I first started, I thought I wanted to be a VA, a virtual assistant. So that's what I did for the first few months. And in my previous role, I'd been an office manager and an HR and operations manager, amongst other things. And I was known in the office as being the techie one. So I kind of came into the online business world and I said, I'm going to be a VA or an ops manager, and I'm really techie. But I very quickly discovered that I actually wasn't as techie at this stuff as what I thought I would be. And it was a very, 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 very steep learning curve. My personality-wise, every time someone said, oh, so can you do blah, 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 or do you do such and such, I'd kind of be like, oh, not really. Yeah, sure, I can do it. And then I'd go and work it out. I'd watch YouTube videos, or I'd, do a course or something like that, work out how to do it. So it might take me, say, 3 hours to learn something and then a couple more hours to implement it or to do the thing, where maybe it was only supposed to be a 20-minute job. but I'd feel so bad about it taking that long. I would just either not charge at all for it, or I'd just charge for the 15 minutes or something. And it very quickly starts sucking up your time when you realize that saying yes to everyone is actually saying no to how you want to work. And I mean, most of us start businesses because we want more time with our family, we want more freedom, more flexibility. We don't want to do all those jobs that we had to do when we were in a job working for someone else. And all of that sort of thing. So it's almost an imperative part of starting a business is doing all of the things so that you can work out and get really, really clear on what it is that you definitely don't want to do to get to the point where you're comfortable with outsourcing it or automating it and that sort of thing. So the bottom line is I'm a massive fan of, analogies like swim in your own lane, work in your own zone of genius, all of that sort of thing. But it takes a bit of trial and error and experimenting to work out exactly what that is sometimes. So it's okay to, be flexible and try things out to work out what you absolutely don't want to do, even if you're still not quite sure what you do want to do. I'm a massive, massive fan of outsourcing and automating and all of that sort of thing. So if and when it becomes appropriate, or you can, work it into your budget and work it into your mindset, getting people on like a VA, even if it's only for a few hours a week. If your budget is 30 hours a week and you can get a couple of hours of support, it's absolutely a great place to start, right up to the point where you can actually outsource all of the functions that you really don't like or don't have time or don't have the passion for. So if you can't be bothered doing all of your bookkeeping stuff, you outsource it. If you don't want to do your admin or your social media, you outsource it. And there's some really easy and effective ways that you can do that very, very quickly. You don't have to wait until you're earning heaps of money. And actually having someone who can support you for a couple of hours a week even frees up so much of your time to actually earn some money so that, you're actually working in your own zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that because, and if you hope you don't mind me asking, but how was it actually just letting go mentally for yourself, like as a recovering perfectionist, to knowing that, okay, you know what, actually, I'm not so great at this, or this is actually taking me X amount of time when it should have only taken me 20 minutes, or an expert 20 minutes.
Yeah.
How did that process work out in your mind, and what would you recommend for people to learn to let go a little bit easier too?
Yeah. Look, I remember I was a manager of a retail store when I was 19, and I remember I had 3 or 4 um, uh, reviews with my regional manager, and every single time everything was great except for my delegation. So every single time it kept coming out, you need to delegate more, you're burning out, you're doing too many hours, that sort of thing. And I really, really worked on that because I was a perfectionist and I wanted to get, 5 stars on everything. So I really worked on delegating, but I still had a bit of a control thing. I guess for me in my business, the biggest thing is starting with something that is, I call it unstuff-upable. So something that's kind of pretty hard to get wrong, but also even if it does go wrong, it's not going to unfold your entire business or you deplete your reputation or anything like that. So I always say if you're talking about outsourcing and starting to get a VA or someone like that to support you in your business, start with things that are fairly basic and straightforward, such as maybe social media scheduling. So scheduling a heap of posts or scheduling some posts about your blogs, or if you're doing promotions or something like that. One of the biggest things I did when I first started with a VA was I created a bit of a system, and I think I probably did a little video recording about how I did a certain process. And I thought to myself, it would take me about an hour because I'm pretty quick at this, but she won't be that quick. So I gave her the handover and I said, you've got an hour and a half to do this, and let me know where you're up to after an hour and a half. And of course, she came back after 45 minutes and was like, I'm done now. What's next? And I'm like, oh, she must have done something wrong. Went through, no, everything was fine, everything was perfect. And then it kind of like the penny dropped, and the light bulb came on, where this person who I was working with was a professional admin person. Like, that is her job. That is what she does day in, day out. She gets it. And of course she's going to be faster at me, no matter how good I am at it. That is her 100%, like that's her career sort of thing. So it was a bit of, again, that kind of trial by fire. You sort of just have to get started to see what does and doesn't work. But it gets pretty addictive pretty quickly when you see, oh, hang on a minute, I've just gotten so much more of my time back. There was an example not so long ago, probably only a year ago. I'd been putting off this email that I needed to send out. It was like a newsletter or a reminder or something. And for some reason, I just had this massive block about going into my active campaign and sending it out. And, I was just tearing my hair out. And it got to about 11 o'clock on a Thursday night, and I sent her a message and said, hey, if you've got some time tomorrow, would you mind doing this such and such for me? And she said 15 minutes later, okay, that's done. Let me know if there's anything tomorrow. Like, really? I've literally just been procrastinating this for the last 4 or 5 days. I've sent one message and it's done 15 minutes later. What are you thinking, Claire? The amount of time that I'd wasted going in and out and getting distracted and procrastinating and probably scrolling through Facebook aimlessly when I could have just sent a message and it would have been done 4 days before.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. And I mean, I've got some amazing VAs that are around 15 Australian dollars per hour, and they're absolutely incredible. And I think, the hour that I can get them to do something probably takes 2 or 3 hours of work off my plate, because I, go to do something and then I get distracted and I do something else. And if I'm going in to make an email, I'll go and fix the template and I'll go and change some links and I'll move something else around, and that'll take me off to somewhere else. Whereas if I give a task to someone else, they just go and do the task. So they're quicker at it than I am anyway. And I get 4 hours back for the price of 1 hour.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't make sense not to. So I think it's a really bit of blind faith, having a bit of a go, finding the right person and making sure you feel a bit comfortable with your actual handover and some processes beforehand as well.
Yeah, and I love that you even mentioned about, you made like a little video and you didn't just like throw it over to them and expect that they just to understand. You actually took that time, because I feel like a lot of business owners have that expectation rather than actually putting in that effort of, no, well, you got to just train them the way that you want it. So that then in the long run, actually, it's a lot quicker. It's a 15-minute job, because they can already know how you want it done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, it makes a huge difference, which is a great leeway into the next element, which is rules. Because just like in Pictionary, artists can't use sign language, letters, dashes, speak to teammates, numbers, or ears for sounds like. How has rules, or let's say checklists, that you have and you enjoy color coding made a difference in your business and life?
That's a good question. I think I've literally just been speaking to someone on a summit about this today, about having some structure. For me, the whole thing is about creating more space to do the things that you like. And I work a lot with creatives and healers and people in the health and coaching space who are amazing and incredible at their craft, and they know their stuff inside out. They're brilliant with their delivery and that sort of thing, but the business stuff has never really interested them. So that's where I kind of can help them with that sort of thing. But working with people like that, often there's a bit of a pushback, because they feel like if they have too much structure or too many processes or systems, it will actually stifle their creativity. But interestingly, every single time I work with someone like that and we put some systems in place, they always send an email or a message saying, I can't believe, but I actually have time to do blah, blah, blah. I have time to go and do some painting, or I have time to go and play with this thing, or I have time to do more client work and that sort of thing, because they have accidentally gotten a little bit caught up in the working on the business rather than working in the business. And as I said before, we start businesses so that we can have more time to do the things we love, not less. We start businesses so that we can work with the people that we want to, and not, just get stuck in all of the mundane stuff. And sometimes that is a procrastinator because we're a bit afraid of actually doing the work or whatever, and we get stuck in the minutiae of business operations. But I think having some sort of structures to fall back on really helps. And one thing I think, when we work in other people's businesses and we work for someone else, and we're an employee or we have a job or whatever, is that we work within these kind of confines, and we've usually got things like job descriptions and KPIs and things that we have to do. And it's funny, when we first go into business, sometimes we replicate some of those things, and sometimes we're doing that just because it's habit and not because it actually is necessary for our business. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it is exactly what can actually propel you to go forward and to go further. There's this thing that happens where we often set up a business that demands, say, 50, 60, 70 hours from us, and we've done that completely by accident, with this entire intention of only working 15, 20, 25 hours. And it gets to a point where you go, oh, like I've accidentally basically rebuilt the job that I've just come out of in my own business. So it's a bit of a risk in that sense, that you can actually start to overwork. So setting some purpose-driven boundaries and goals and actually filtering everything that you do through them is incredibly important. So I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure everyone has this shiny object thing. I call it shiny object syndrome or whatever. And every time you see a new app or a new tool or a course or a video or whatever, you want to go, you want to learn, you want to implement this new thing or whatever. But having something to filter all of your ideas through, or to filter all of your activities through, actually means that you can get more stuff done, and you can get less done, but it's more of the right stuff, is kind of the whole idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like you even had like a really good touch on the stigma of systems. Like I think that word, it creeps people out right away,
Yes,
being like, oh, I
sure.
can't do it, or it's overwhelming, or I don't know where to start. When realistically speaking, systems save you time, energy, and money. It's like,
Yes,
don't you want that? That's like how you said, it's
yeah,
going back to that business goal of this is why you got in business in the first place, is so you can have more time to do X, Y, Z, whatever that might be,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's a lot to do with time and money for the most part.
yeah,
And yeah, so it's really great that you touched on that. And I love how you actually put in the analogy of it's kind of like your lens, like what is your checkpoint? So you have that shiny object, but is that actually going to be beneficial and help you, or is it going to distract you? On
hmm
it too. Great. So do you, if you don't mind me asking, Claire, have you integrated rules inside your home as well? Especially because, you know, you do work from home and you're a parent as well. So have you found by setting up some sort of structure or system that your children understand to, of course, their degree, but also with your partner as well, that it makes it work?
Yeah, and it's been quite an interesting year. So my husband also, probably 10 months ago or so, also started his own business and started working from home. And for someone like me who's an introvert, and I'm very systematic and very methodical usually in how I work, it was a real it was a really interesting change in the dynamic between, the kids would usually go off in the morning to daycare and school, and then I have the house to myself for 8 hours to, do whatever I needed to do 3 days a week. And then all of a sudden I had someone who was sharing my desk and who was getting up and making coffees or phone calls while I was trying to do my thing. And it was like working in an office with that noisy coworker again. So yeah, absolutely. We've had many conversations about, boundaries and, if I'm working, you can't just come over and talk to me every 5 minutes, because if I was at work in an office, you wouldn't be on the phone to me every 5 minutes. So, having some boundaries and that sort of thing in there, but also other checkpoints. That's beautiful to be able to work together and sit down and enjoy a coffee, or have a chat and bounce things around. So it's kind of not being so rigid and accidentally falling back into that trap of being back as an employee and not allowed to talk unless you're standing around the water cooler sort of thing. But also, maintaining some boundaries, because we do have things to do with that sort of thing. My office is actually my desk, which is in the corner of the dining room, so it's front and center in the middle of the house. I've got, as I said, two kids, 3 and a 5-year-old, so they're always very interested. Look, I'd like to say that we have a rule that nothing goes on my desk except for my stuff, but it really doesn't happen. There's usually dress ups and juice cups and goodness knows what else all around.
Mm-hmm.
But they're pretty good. They'll come over and have a look at the computer, but they know not to touch it. If I'm on the phone, they're generally pretty good. I mean, they're kids, so
Of course.
they still do their own thing. But often they come over, and many of my clients and people who I work with, or people who I interact with a lot, they know who my kids are, because I'll be on the phone or on Zoom with them, and one of the kids will come over and sit on my lap and say hello and just listen and kind of take it all in. And I'm such a business geek. Every time one of my kids says, "I want to be a such and such when I grow up," I'm like, "You could do that, or you could start your own business." Like, I'm already so. I'd love, to instill in them that they don't have to work for the man, that they can, start their own thing. And, every time I hear about a young person who's an entrepreneur, I'm like, we've got to get the kids to watch this. I'm so into it. I would love them, if that's what they're drawn to do, I'd love them to do that. So, we try and also talk a lot to them about, we have our own business and that means that we can do this, but some people work jobs and that means, something different, and everyone's a little bit different. But just to try and expose them to the possibilities that, when I was a kid, I didn't really ever think about being a business. In fact, when I was in high school, I wanted to be an actress, and I ended up going to do psychology for a year, and my mum kept saying, I really think you should do business management studies, or you should be an entrepreneur. You're very entrepreneurial. And I, at the time, was so insulted. I thought, how dare you? I'm way more interesting than business. I, at the time, just thought business people were a bunch of, musty old men sitting around a board table smoking cigarettes and congratulating each other. I didn't really realize, what business could be as a possibility for me. I really thought it was just the most boring thing in the world. So, one of my big things is showing the kids that they don't have to do the whole go to school, go to uni, get a job, get married, blah, blah, blah. I really want them to follow their dreams and, if they want to go and explore, or they want to start their own business, all of that sort of thing. So it's an awesome kind of, training ground, or just, for them to be around that. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great that you're even planting that seed now, because they're going to get it naturally just by seeing you guys at home.
Yeah.
And once they grow up and they start going to other friends' houses where their parents aren't home yet, or there could, other opportunities are going to arise, but they'll see things differently. And it's great that you're communicating and letting them know that you don't have to follow the status quo.
Yeah.
You can do different pathways. And I really do believe by the time our kids are there, who knows what a college degree will be even worth.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So we'll definitely be changing. So we're going to go into the almost final element, which is the deck of cards. Because just like the game, there's a deck of cards with a variety of items the artist must draw. That's the same with business. Sometimes we can feel like there's so many moving parts that we have to know, like we've already touched on earlier, but like the marketing, the sales, the bookkeeping, the content creation, etc. Is that one of your first structures that you do with your clients, is how to streamline what's important and what isn't?
Yeah, it is. Everyone's a little bit different. Like I said, a lot of people who I work with are incredibly good at their craft, but they've never run a business before. So it's a whole new world, having a skill or a passion or a thing that you're delivering, that you're helping someone else with, transforming their mindset or whatever it is that you're doing in that space. And also the business side of it is really new to some people. So there's definitely some systems and structures that can be set up from the beginning. However, I'm not a big fan of going from zero to hero really quickly, because often what happens, especially in the first year to 2 years of your business, is that hopefully you're experimenting and you're trying things out, and you kind of get to a point where you go, nope, that's not it anymore. It's this. I'm going to try this now. No, that didn't work. I'll go and try this. I think what often happens is we go and we start a business and we spend $10,000 on the coach and the course and the website and the graphic design, logo, all of that sort of thing, and all of the bells and whistles, which means we're starting off on the back foot. And we haven't tested it yet. We're not even quite sure if our messaging is right or if our target market's right. I'd much prefer someone to just go, okay, I think I need some social media. I think I need a website, and, some of those sort of basic things. Try it out yourself to start with, and don't spend too much money until you start making some money. I have done a lot of work with like a client journey marketing specialist, a branding specialist, SEO, all of that sort of thing. And my initial reaction was always, oh, I wish I knew you when I started my business. But in hindsight, there would have been absolutely no point, because what I started my business and where it is now are two very, very different things. I would have flushed $10,000 down the toilet and still had to change things every 5 minutes, because that's how quickly things kind of seem to move. So yes, there's definitely some things that can be streamlined and made a bit more easy and supportive. And I think probably what comes before systemizing and streamlining everything is actually understanding what it is that you want to be getting out of your business, and whether that is income, connection, expertise, or sales, or like income. You've kind of got to start there. So having some little steps forward, start making money. You can start making money with a Facebook page. You don't have to have a website. You don't have to have branding or logos. You don't have to have another qualification. You just don't need to do all of those other things. I'm all about lean startup. And ideally what happens is, once you start doing anything that can be turned into a process, i.e. You publish a blog or you set up a webinar or something, the first time you do it, you're creating that system anyway, and then that can just be tweaked, over time after that. So yeah, I wouldn't get too bogged down in things that I would sort of ideally call systems. It's more about having a bit of a strategy about where am I going to spend my time and energy, and what's the fastest way, the most efficient way that I can do that without worrying about all the bells and whistles to start with.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that eases a lot of pressure off of people right off the bat, too, even just hearing that. You know, because I feel like there is that you have to have all these things when you don't. So it's great that you ease that pressure from them.
It's a really big thing, and I think it was such a big motivator for me to start my business, because I often had people say, how do you get it all done? How do you do all this stuff? And you know, I would often talk to someone and they'd have this idea, and I'd be like, oh, that's awesome. Maybe you could do such and such, and I'd like end up almost doing a kind of a plan or a strategy around it. And then I'd see them a few months later, and then a year later, and always ask, how's that thing going? Oh, no, I couldn't do that. No, I need to wait till I've got $10,000 in the bank, or I need to wait until I've got another qualification, or I need to wait until blah, blah, blah. Like, the time is never going to be right. It's like having kids. The time is never going to be right. But if you've got something that you love doing and that you're really good at doing, you don't need all of that other stuff, you know. And this mentor who I've worked with and used to work with in the past, she's all about lean startup, and you start making money before you start spending it. And it's actually doable. It's so doable, and it's so much safer because you don't have this huge amount of pressure on yourself to quickly make back that money that you borrowed from yourself, or you borrowed from the bank, or you know, all of that sort of thing. It's just such a much more aligned and easy way to start off and to get into it.
Yeah, I love that lean startup. A great way to put it. As a business owner, we do want to keep our audience entertained, right? So even if it's with our craft, or we want to add value to their everyday lives and keep them coming back for our products and services, in today's world, social media is a huge part of that. And like you mentioned, blogs, or it could be Instagram or Facebook, however you might be doing it. However, I do feel, and it could be wrong, but I do feel most business owners actually get caught up with thoughts like, I don't know what to put out there. And they get that staring at a blank screen, overwhelmness, frustration. How do you help with content creation?
Content creation and creating consistent content is probably where I spend about 30% of my time. So it's a big chunk of what I do with clients in my membership, and also on the retreats and one-on-one. So it's definitely a big kind of thing. There's so many different ways to kind of come about it. I think there's two ways, and I'll explain the first one because the other one's basically the same but in reverse. So the first way that seems to be accessible to most business owners is to start with your core message or core messages. So when you first start, it's kind of, everyone explains core message a little bit differently, but my version is that it's not your elevator pitch. It's not the, hi, I'm Claire, I'm a business coach, I live in Brisbane, blah, blah, blah. It's not that thing. It's the message that you want everyone to understand after every impression point with you. So whether they see you on social media, they get your newsletter, they see you speak at an event or a webinar, or they look at your website, that they walk away understanding this thing. So for me, when I first started, it was about, you know, things don't have to be this hard. Your life can be easier than this. It's that thing that when people are telling you what their problem is, that you just kind of want to reach over and grab them by the shoulder and give them a little gentle shake and say blah, 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 blah. And whatever that thing is, that's probably a hint as to what your core message is. So it's the thing that you are out there to spread the word and to make people think, feel, know, do, understand, get, all that sort of thing, right? So that's a really good place to start. And as I said, this is one of those things that when you first start out, it'll look very different to a year down the track and 2 years down the track, and that's totally fine. It's not set in stone. It's a very dynamic thing, and it will change with you and your business, and that's totally fine. But having a bit of an understanding about a couple. So when you first start, you might have 4 or 5 core messages. It might be like, you can have it all, you can have your cake and eat it too, and you can be really smart about it. You know, there's usually a few kind of key themes about what you're passionate about, and it's often the thing that when someone asks you a question, it pricks you up a little bit, and you kind of want to get a bit ranty, or you want to stand up on a soapbox and give everyone a bit of a lecture, or it either pushes your buttons because you totally agree, or it pushes your buttons because you totally disagree. So there's a couple of hints as to what your core message might be about. Now, underneath that, the next step is to understand what are the different sort of streams or pillars or categories, whatever you want to call them. So say, for example, let's say, I'll give you mine, for example. So my core message is it doesn't have to be this hard. I really want people to understand that they can take the easy way out, they can be efficient and effective, they can find hacks and all that sort of thing to actually get to the same end thing, right? So the first one of my pillars is about content strategy. So it's about defining your message and really finding ways to get out there and get in front of the right tribe so that you can start building your audience and building that know, like, and trust thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of my other ones is the freedom in structure stuff. So it's about having some of these structures in place and some of this, things in the back end that are actually working for you, so you're not having to put as much time in and all that sort of thing. And then the third one is about the recovering perfectionist. So they're my three pillars, for example. And you can see pretty clearly there's three very different parts of my business, and each of those leads to a heap of free opt-ins, and there's also, the ways that I work with people one-on-one and in a group situation as well in all of those streams. And then that's sort of how you start to build a really clear picture of what information you need to be putting in front of people. There's this thing that happens. There's two things that happen. We either do a blog, for instance, about something that has absolutely no relevance, and that's fine if you're practicing and you're okay with, kind of faffing around a little bit to begin with. That's totally fine to start practicing. But once you get a little bit further down, the content that you put out, the content that people want from you is going to be pretty specific and a little bit more high level and more strategic. So everyone, there's always someone else who does the same sort of thing as you do, but people come to you because they like how you deliver it or your spin on it or your opinion or something like that. So it's okay with having your personal stuff in there, like your personal opinion and that sort of thing, but it has to be, it has to serve a purpose. So again, with all of your content, it really, if you filter it back through those purpose things about your time, your energy, and what you want people to do with that, is a really great place to start. So if you put a blog out, you have to have some sort of call to action, whether that's just come join my Facebook group or listen to the podcast, right through to, if you want this extra freebie, maybe give me your email address and I'll send this thing to you or whatever. So there's lots of different levels of having calls to actions and opt-ins and that sort of thing. It's kind of there's so many different ways of doing content. So usually I say three pillars is usually pretty good. It could be modalities that you work in, it could be outcomes, it could be systems, it could be different avatar, like market segments that you work with. It can be divided up pretty much any way. And often, most of the time when someone starts doing a content plan with me, it's very clear what their 3 or 4 kind of subcategories are. Mm-hmm. And then you can build your social media and your blog stuff underneath that. The other version that I mentioned before is the opposite. So sometimes that is a little bit too structured for people. The next best option, I think, is to give yourself a little bit of time to do a bit of a brainstorm and try and come up with 100 different blog titles. They're not set in stone, but just come up with 100 different blog titles of things that you could teach people about, show people, all of that sort of thing. And then you usually start seeing some clear themes that you could break those titles up into, and they become your categories, and then you work backwards to your core message. So they're kind of the two different versions, and either of them are completely valid and completely fine. Just different things work in slightly different ways.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Claire. So many nuggets, and I've taken a ton of notes there, so I'm sure the audience has as well, or if not, going back to re-listen to it to ensure they're doing that for their own business as well, because you can always get little other ideas.
Right.
So awesome. Well, I'm going to wrap up today's board game, but if there's anything you'd like to add before we wrap it up, please say so now. We'd love to hear anything that you have for insights.
So I guess the only other thing that sort of popped into my mind when I was thinking about this chat and the Pictionary stuff, my favorite game, by the way, is that whole process when, say, using the analogy of Pictionary, when your partner is doing the drawing and you're guessing and you're trying to work it out and everyone gets really frustrated and the time is going and all of that sort of thing. That is exactly what business feels like so much of the time, because there are certain things that we either put pressure on for ourselves or we have an external pressure. So many people I work with they're like, okay, I've got 6 months to get this off the ground, or my husband said I have to go back to work, or something like that, right? There's always a little bit of urgency or pressure, or, I've got enough savings that we can sustain this for 12 months, but it has to be blah, 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 mm-hmm. or, all that sort of thing. There's always a little bit of a thing, but you're kind of always, you never have the entire picture, right? You never have this beautiful image that you can go straight to working out what it is. And I think that's exactly, what Pictionary is like, but what business is like, that you kind of, you never know everything. There's always going to be some missing pieces, and you're kind of trying to piece things together, and you might be listening to what the people on the other team are saying and like trying to, listen to that. And I think comparisonitis is a really big thing. Unfortunately, can't get stuck in that comparisonitis thing, but give yourself permission to have a bit of a play and to experiment and be curious and, have a bit of a laugh with it. Don't worry about getting it completely right. You don't have to know exactly what the end product is going to look like in order to get started with something right now. So that's probably my final little
I love it. Yeah. I love that. It's such a great analogy and well said, and a great way to wrap up today's interview. So thank you so much. And I love the comparisitis. That's I've never heard that term before, but it definitely fits.
Mm-hmm. It's a big thing. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thanks so much for being on the show. And most importantly, Claire, I'm sure people are wondering, how the heck can they get in touch with you? How can they work with you? How can they check out your podcast? So anything that you say, I'll add it to the show notes. But please let us know, how can we connect with you?
Oh, lovely. Thank you. So, yeah, as you said, the podcast is called The Recovering Perfectionist. So iTunes or Stitcher, or it's also just on my website, which is clairebarton.com.au/podcast, and you can have a look at a few things there. There's a freebies page on my website, clairebarton.com.au/free, and there's a heap of freebies that you can grab from there, such as a content planner. There's a 90-day content planner, a tribe tracker, and a few other bits and pieces. So that's where you can find those. And I'm also on social, Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely add it all to the show notes as well, so you guys can all click on it. But thank you so much for being on the show, Claire. Such a wealth of knowledge, and we're really honored to have you on. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Awesome. Thank you, Amber.
You're most welcome. Thanks so much, listeners. That's today's episode. We really appreciate and love you all. So thanks again for joining in. If you've enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, or follow us on your chosen platform. And of course, share with anyone you could see benefiting from this. For those who are brand new listening to our show, you can find us on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Podbean, and Spotify, and we'll be releasing our next episode every Monday. So have a great week, and we'll talk to you guys next week. See you then. Bye.